All right, it is 6 o'clock on April 14th, 2014, and this is the Curriculum and Instruction Committee. Let's just go around the table, and if everybody could state their name for the recording, I'd appreciate it. This is Connor Kurtz.
This is Mary Beth Torsha.
Larry Speed.
Rich Martino.
Tom Henkel.
Mary Beth Kiesel.
Andrea Dinsmore. Jenny Rexford.
Carol Bites.
All right, great. We have a few members of the public tonight. Pretty light turnout. But we can begin on item 1, Go Math, adding to second grade. If Mrs. Torsha can give a brief overview for us.
I can. Go Math is a K-6 math curriculum that we adopted 3rd through 6th grade a year ago by my predecessor. So this year, the only grade that it was that Go Math was implemented in was grade 6. Because there wasn't sufficient in-servicing for the younger grades, and they just didn't feel as though they could use it to fidelity. So we are having in-servicing done for the teachers in May for the upcoming school year, and we would like to bring second grade up to par with it as well, because it's aligned with the PA Common Core.
Now, is Go Math, is this just is it a textbook system?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's a textbook system. It comes with a contract of part of the fee that we're paying replenishes our, what do we call those? The consumable books for I believe we're on a 5-year plan. Right, it will be 5 years. So that's part of the cost. And where I would take the money to get the second grade would be from the Accountability Block Grant, which is how it was written last year, to be able to include second grade. But I wanted to bring it to the board's attention that we would like to, if we're going to implement it in grades 3 to 5, no time like the present, to bring it right into second grade.
So we're going to be purchasing textbooks pretty much. Is that correct?
It's a softback book.
Okay. I know you mentioned,
yes.
Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
That you wanted it to come through this committee because we have been talking about that policy. So I'd just like to express my appreciation
Absolutely.
for doing that.
Moving forward, if there were to be any additional or recommendation to the board for anything purchased, you would have gotten to go through it, reviewed it. I would have started a whole process with the teachers to make sure that they were on board with what we wanted to bring forward, and we would be presenting after we did our curriculum writing, because the book does not drive curriculum. The book is there to support the curriculum.
Great.
Okay. So that's it on Go Math.
I'm just curious, what is it? What's the difference between that and what's currently being taught?
That was my question.
Because it's aligned to the PA Common Core, which has changed some of the math that the younger grades are getting opposed to where they're learning it currently. Some of and I'm looking to Andrea because I know, and Mary Beth, they've been through the book more, but some of the concepts are being tested earlier in 3rd grade, and they're being taught in 2nd grade. So we want to be able to stay on par with the spiral effect of what the PA Common Core is more or less doing.
I'm just curious. I mean, if you're teaching it 3rd to 5th, they may as well start working into it earlier, but I just didn't understand what it was.
It's that they're just calling it Go Math. The other ones are Houghton Mifflin, and they have another title. And this is, I believe, a Pearson product, not a Houghton Mifflin. So again, it was purchased because it was aligned to the PA Common Core. It was only gotten for 4 grade levels, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th. We want to bring it into 2nd grade as well.
When can you have a copy of the book for the committee to peruse?
We do actually have it, and I apologize. I know that Carol has had a copy of it to look at,
Great.
but I would be happy to bring a copy to the next curriculum meeting.
Excellent.
For anybody else that wants to peruse it. Yeah.
And what is the cost of this?
I believe I can't quote. I'll apologize. I know I have a quote on my laptop, and I can get that for you later this evening to see what the provider gave me.
When you said they're tested in 3rd grade, is that the PSSA?
Yes.
And what are the consumables?
The consumables are books that they write in, and then each year those get thrown away, and then we get new ones. Right.
Have you had the opportunity to review the book, Mrs. Bites? Do you have any thoughts on it that you're willing to share at this moment? Okay. All right.
I'm not fond of it, but I'm not fond of the core in general. In fact, I'm not pleased at all with the way they're teaching it, using number lines and basket weaves and everything except straight math, but I understand that the reality is our kids are going to be tested on it in 3rd grade, the way they're teaching it.
Right.
So it's just a grim reality. I hope that we could somehow work into the classroom time, the good old basics too, but
Okay.
I'm not really sure that's reality.
So this program strictly is a result of Common Core?
Yes.
It is.
And excuse me, go ahead. I think it does encompass a lot of the basics. For instance, in first and second grade, they really narrow the scope so that the kids are just keeping to learning how to add and subtract without, so the scope is really narrowed as opposed to learning a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this. They want to get deeper and develop that conceptual understanding of the content. So
I'd be very interested in seeing the second grade because I've only reviewed the third grade.
Right.
Well,
And
the
there,
scary part of it is,
That's okay.
The scary part is there are groups trying to get Common Core repealed, and their chances of success are not great. But should that happen, then all these kids that have been learning this method, now they're sort of
then
left.
they know one more way to solve a problem, right?
Well, that's one way to look at it.
All right. Well, thank you for that. If you could just forward out the cost, then when you get a
Absolutely,
chance.
yep.
I did neglect to mention at the beginning of the meeting that this is being recorded. Felt like I need to say that. Moving on to item 2, if there's no more discussion on item 1, purchasing additional honors algebra 2 books.
And this is not a new series. This is just additional text, so that we made sure that every student had the book. And I'll let Tom speak a little bit more to the Algebra Honors 2 book request. We were short.
We're short because of having to change the sequence that we've talked about. And that's where we came up with 40 short and opposed to.
And again, I'll use the accountability block grant money for the purchase of these texts. That's what the grant was written for, and they will be purchased before the end of this year, both the second grade math and the honors books, which would be in part of my grant, the way that it was written to support additional book costs.
Did you say 40 in the third grade?
Yes, it comes. It's a crime. It's a crime, the cost of these books.
Yeah.
And we're going used.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Talking
Used is
over
your
100?
a little under 100, and it's something's just not right somewhere because you can get it on and off system for like
They
20
do it
bucks.
because they can. I mean,
right.
it's seriously.
Yeah.
And what was the date of publication of that book?
So I don't know the date. Maybe it's been out a little bit. It's not like 10 years old or 20 years. It's the old
Five,
honor.
six.
You probably the same one you
Same one you used?
I don't remember.
Two's honor algebra too.
Already he's forgetting.
I don't remember my textbooks.
Yeah.
I like to forget that stuff. No.
But I just wanted to present to the board, to the committee, that we were going to be seeking out additional Algebra 2 books and what the reason for
All right.
that purchase is.
Well, yeah, well, thank you for letting us know.
And then service learning at the high school is something that I talked about briefly at the last committee meeting, and it's something that I would like to see Mr. Henkel make part of his course selection book, and that is where we're looking at senior students who might be sitting in a study hall and opposed, instead of them having 2 study halls, maybe we could put 2 study halls at the end of the day or the beginning of the day, and that they could be a service learner at either Birdsboro or Monocacy, because the high school proximity to either of those buildings is close. They could earn a 0.5 credit to go into the classroom, support, be a big, peer, tutor, be a big brother big sister for the kids, at either of those schools. If they're interested in education and they want to, look to becoming a teacher, this would be a great introduction for them. It could either be a semester class or a full year. I would, the student's schedule will dictate, what kind of time constraints, but I wanted to just bring to this committee to see if anybody had any kind of concerns about using our high school seniors. And we can look at seniors, and if we wanted to, and we didn't get a large group, we could even look at the juniors, so long as we are looking at taking them from a study hall and it wouldn't incorporate any additional staff. We could appoint somebody, maybe one of the assistant principals, just to more or less keep a record of the students that are, they would have to keep a record of the students that are participating and making sure that attendance is being capped at the schools, and just coordinate that. But in my own children's school district, it's a very successful program, and I just would like to get more information if the committee feels like this is something they'd like to learn more about so that we could potentially put something like this in place at Daniel Boone.
How would they get there?
The students in the Weiser district do drive, and I asked the principal about liability and the concerns, and she said that, the parents are fine with it, with their children, driving to the location. They haven't had an issue in the past, so.
The parents being fine with it's one thing, but I think we still need to check our liability should somebody get in an accident.
Okay.
I mean, they're traveling on school time at our discretion, so I think you need to check the
Are they,
liability.
or they're not coming back, are they?
If it's at the end of the day, they wouldn't. If it would be at the beginning of the day, depending on where study halls might be or how their schedules would, right?
Within the school day. They're traveling.
I was just thinking if they were dismissed from school at 1:15 to go to
They're
the...
doing this in lieu of a study hall.
Right. I'll check on that. I will check to see what type of liability the school district might have in having something like that in place.
I have two questions, and they're fairly broad. Is there something, maybe we could reach out to local colleges, and if there's a way that we could take this type of program and brand it in a way that the students will be more attractive for placement in some college courses? I don't know if there's a way that they can transition almost from Daniel Boone High School to college and use this program to set themselves apart. I don't know if there's a way we could brand that, maybe call it an internship. I don't know, just something like that. I know it's a fairly broad topic. And the other thing is, if a student, let's say we implement this next year, if that's the time frame you're talking about, what will the students do when they get to the buildings? Maybe I would appreciate just a little bit more of a...
They would be assigned to a
structure.
teacher.
Okay.
The teacher then would, assign them different duties, whether they need, somebody to maybe make some photocopies for them, to have small group, to, sit and read with students, be an assistant in the room and help with math or, anything that might be going on that they would be able to lend a hand at.
Okay, the kind what a volunteer would typically do.
Yes,
in elementary
exactly.
school. Great.
Yep. Only you're setting up that relationship between this high school kid who's coming down to the elementary level, and if they're a football player and they come in one day and they have their jersey on, which they do on Fridays, then they make a connection. I can remember a long time ago being in elementary school, the quarterback of the football team came into our class, and if you have an older sibling who might know him and now they know you, it's just it's a neat connection for the kids all around. And for some of our students, they are coming from single family homes, might not have a father figure or a male figure. If boys would get as interested in this program as what girls would, I think it would be a neat way of partnering them with someone.
It's a great way to introduce students if they want to go into career teaching. It's
Right.
a great introduction.
So
Would you
I'd like to-
establish some criteria?
Yeah.
yes, I would go
You're
back
not
and.
going to have a straight D student teaching kids how to read.
Oh,
reading
no. They would have to have a certain GPA. Again, I'm not looking to put this out right away for next year, and maybe it's something we could look to use come January, that we could have some time over the summer to develop it and be able to say to students, okay, as the semester changes, here's something else that you could opt into.
I wouldn't want to see it, somebody just going down there making copies.
No.
I'd like to see some meat in it.
Yep.
How do you ladies feel about this?
In some school districts that I've heard of that do something similar, there's a culminating portfolio that goes along with it. And just as you were saying, Connor, in terms of looking at post-secondary education, those portfolios are used as a submission, especially if they're looking at going into the field of education or early childhood. And they pick a professional goal, which goes along with what we're doing with the PA Core for career readiness.
Great.
And that can be used to make that connection. So I see a value in it.
Right, and just like you were saying too, I mean, I know I did something kind of similar to this when I was in high school, and it was really nice because I knew I wanted to be a teacher, so it was time for me to get into the classroom, and then I could use that in my college interviews and say, I've already done this, and here's some things that I've done. It makes you more marketable that way too, and if you have a portfolio to go along with it, all the better.
That sounds like a good idea.
Great.
So something for us to, really look into and try to put into place, if not mid-year, then definitely for the following school years.
Okay.
Okay?
Great. Thank you for that. Thank you for that idea.
Okay. My next idea is coming to you and to the committee, and again, this is not something that I think that we can or can't do come September, but it's something that I would like to think about. And that is to start an at-risk full-day kindergarten classroom. Because we do have our half-day kindergarten program, any child that is part of the Berks County Intermediate Unit's early intervention program has an opportunity, not every child, but some of them that are identified to be at risk have an opportunity to extend their year with the IU at the cost of the district. Up until age 5, we don't pay for it, but at age 5 on, we begin paying for any type of program that a student is participating in at the IU. The school district doesn't have the ability to say yes or no, we want them to participate. It's automatic to this group of students. And because we've gone from full day to half day, we're seeing a few more students going into the all-day program at the IU. It's costing roughly, and I'm not going to be quoted, and I will get more exact cost, and I meant to get that from Kim, but it's roughly around $20,000, I think, per child. If we had 3 children, that was $60,000. We could have our own at-risk kindergarten classroom that could meet the needs of not just 3 students, but I would keep it at a cap size of maybe between 10 and 12. Our students who are the most neediest, there would be a criteria that would have to be met. Those are all things that we would have to develop.
Can you just, I think I have an idea of what it is, but for the sake of the rest of the committee and even myself, just define what at-risk is when it comes to this.
At-risk are children who are developmentally delayed in that they're not able to grasp a pen or a pencil, perhaps. They're not identifying colors or shapes. Normal milestones, when you're getting ready for kindergarten, I don't want to even touch base on reading. They certainly aren't picking up simple sight words at all.
Okay.
Just would need a more intensive program in order to be able to be successful in kindergarten and then move on to first grade. Some of these children actually would benefit from repeating kindergarten, which we've done in the past. Andrea, anything you can add to?
There were a couple different models that we tossed around. One was a full day kindergarten with 1 staff member, and then we also talked about having the half day with a half day at risk built onto that, so it would be a little possibly more cost effective. But looking at those particular models, when you're looking at risk, it might not necessarily have a group of students who are identified at the beginning of the year. We have a set of assessments that we're using. We have kindergarten district-wide common assessments that we're using. We're using DIBELS protocols. So there would be normed standards that we'd be looking for. So if the students were not making that standard, that's what we would be using as the criteria possibly to judge whether or not a student would be eligible for the classroom.
Okay, great, thank you.
The kids that go to the IU now, do they do their half day here and then go there, or are they there all day?
They're there all day. They're there all day. So I would I'm bringing this to the committee because I do want to look at what the numbers are being projected for next year, and if we can bring that cost back to the district, and we can look at, I'm not going to know my kindergarten numbers until August, my true kindergarten numbers. I have an estimate. I have, as of today, I know exactly what I have at the 2 buildings, but I know that will grow because last year it grew by 30 over the summer. But depending on what we might have left at the end of the day, I might have 5 classes, which means that I have a person who has a half of afternoon open, and since we already have that teacher being paid, if we opened up that classroom and brought the children from that class to there, it could save us. And I would say that any of the children that might be Amity students, that they would attend our kindergarten program at Monocacy so that there wouldn't be a bus ride over, and that they could transition within the same building to the afternoon class.
So you would just do it at one of the elementaries?
I would only do it at one of the elementaries, and I would do it at Monocacy. Well, my recommendation will be, to do it at Monocacy based upon my realignment presentation.
Now, if I'm understanding correctly, so a student who is at risk would go to Monocacy even if they're within the Amity district. Would they then in first grade go back to Amity?
Yes, they would. Yes.
All right.
Yes. They're only staying at Monocacy because that's where I would recommend having that full day.
My fear would be that students like their friends might know they live
Right.
in this area, and then when it gets to 5th grade, why are you going to Monocacy?
Right,
I'm going
no,
to
they would
Amity,
go
whatever
back
it
in
was.
first grade, and I don't see that as a big problem because they wouldn't have been in our
Yeah.
district at all for kindergarten if they stayed at the IU program, so,
Okay,
you know,
so
they're.
we already have this issue. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
But, question, with the River Rock scenario, we can encourage our kids to go to River Rock, but we can't make them. The kids here that are in the IU, can we make them come here?
Can we?
It's the same kind of
Right.
scenario. The parents would have to, I mean, we basically have to be presenting something that was very appetizing to the family.
Right.
And that would be how we would encourage them to come. The beauty of having a program within the district is that we have an opportunity to use our curriculum so that they're ready to move on in future grades with Daniel Boone. At the IU, it's a curriculum that's separate from what we're doing.
I ask because what I heard you say was the
Right.
savings we would
You're correct,
incur
but if we would have-
pay for it, but if the kids still went to the IU, there are no
Right,
savings.
there wouldn't be. We would have to, we would save for every child that we got to attend this program. So if it's 20 per student and there's 4 and we got 3 out of the 4, we would still save 60 opposed to the 80. But I think in order for us to really be able to do this, we'd have to identify the students and sit down and have transition meetings with the family and, you know, tell them that we have this in place for this year. Would you make a commitment to coming to
And
our program?
The district provides transportation to BCIU currently.
We do. We
Okay.
do get pay for the transportation for early intervention children to go to their full death. Yes.
And that's
that
to and
is-
from.
That is.
I was going to
yes.
say, just that alone, you would
Yeah.
think that would be
Yes.
a good selling point.
I-
I don't
I,
know how many
um,
parents
you-
with their little kindergartner on a bus
Oh, yeah.
all the way to BCIU and back.
I know that I'm thinking back to my days when I was special ed supervisor, and I remember incurring the cost. Andrea, has anything changed in my 7 years?
After 5, like we had talked about, that's when
Right, when we're
incurring the
paying,
cost.
right, exactly, okay. So that's what I
age.
thought, so yes, we would.
Okay.
And a
Yeah.
lot of school districts do this too. I know I've heard a lot of school districts that have half day, have an at-risk full-day kindergarten class. So this is something that's happening in a lot of districts. So, and with good results.
When are they
My son's on
identified?
They are identified at between the 8, well, now it's actually from newborn on, but 3 to 5 was the first original identification of children that, you know, could receive early intervention, but now it's birth to 2,
Okay, so
and
these
then
are
it's
children that are already in the care of BCIU.
somewhat,
Rather
yes.
than-
But they're not multiply disabled children necessarily. They're not significantly delayed through autism or learning disability. A lot of them are children that are developmentally delayed and with other
Do those,
concerns.
after going through a program like this, do the students typically catch up with their peers? Or is it a case by case? I'm sure it's case by
Case
case.
by case, but
It depends on, you know, the disability category that you're working with. When it's early intervening services, if it's classified as developmental delay, that's not anything that is school-age terminology. So once they get here, they need additional evaluation, and that disability category changes. But typically what happens at the IU is we have a lot of students who have speech and language diagnoses as well as developmental delay, and those you're more likely to bridge that achievement gap
Okay.
with those particular students.
Like if they're getting physical therapy or speech therapy or something. they might.
So we would still incur the cost of a related service if they would need something like that. But I think our target population is different than what would be the multidisability
Okay.
classroom.
But they would be part of our population that we're already educating through speech and OT and or PT. And I'm sure that's what hikes up the cost of each child to be placed at in the program.
Makes sense.
So that's something else that we would like to explore so we can bring you more concrete numbers and just continue to have conversation on.
Great.
Okay?
All right.
Okay.
Next up on the agenda, item 5, required credits to graduate. For the sake of the committee, this is something that we've been kind of tabling and kicking down the road ever since we looked at the course selection guide. And I think it's time that we give the high school some direction so students know what to plan for next year. I know, Mr. Martino, do you have any thoughts on the credits situation?
Well, the last I heard, Mr. Hankel was going to make a recommendation on,
You know, based on the time, as of now, with the way it is, I would just keep it the same. And then with possible retirements,
with the what?
possible retirements, and some adjustments in some areas. Take a look at it for planning, but I would say keep it, let's just keep it at 24.65. We're here in April. That's the way it's been, and it's not a low number. It's above average. You go across the counties on the upper end. You go across the 5 counties, it's also on the upper end. We'll keep it right there right now. But I know you were concerned about lowering.
I didn't want it lower.
Right. So keep it at 24.65. That's averaging 6+ credits per year. With a max of 8, you can literally take 8, so you're at 6+.
Okay.
What's the impetus for changing it? You said you
Well, I know there was discussion that if we increase the credits required to graduate, then that would require more students to take courses instead of study halls, correct?
Right.
Okay.
That was the discussion.
Yeah.
There was also the reverse end of that discussion. If we lost career ed, we lost traffic safety, so we
I
have
got to bring it back.
you got to get them somewhere. And
Yeah.
that's the reason now we put some of those other classes in. Hopefully that'll.
I don't
I'm
want
fine
to.
with letting it go for now.
Yeah, the more that we can increase without incurring cost, the better. So,
Yep.
you know, once
Absolutely.
we check out the, what are we calling it? The
A la carte.
a la carte, yeah, courses for next year and, you know, even the service learning moving forward, that these are things that will not incur any additional teacher.
Great. I don't want to get away from this topic, and I think we need to come up with a recommendation tonight.
So 24.65 is the,
Does anybody have any objection either raising it or lowering it?
Or
Are we
keeping
good with
it the
that?
same.
That's present. That's,
Status quo? We're good with that?
I have
Okay.
no objection, but I have a question. If someone has their 24.65 credits, we have touched on this. Instead of having a study hall, what's the possibility of early dismissal?
we have that now.
But only in the case of work, correct? Like, maybe we could. I know in practice it's different.
That's the gray area.
It's, am I going out and checking jobs? No, I am not. If they meet the graduation requirements and I can get them out after 6th period and they say they're doing something,
And the parent signs off on it?
the parents must sign off on it
Okay.
before I even see it. And the counselor then signs off on it that they've checked their transcripts and their grades throughout and they've met all the requirements in all the areas.
All right.
And it's not in September, I just signed off on one today.
Oh, all right. So it's all year long.
Yeah,
Okay.
as long as they,
It's when they get their 24.65.
and they know that they're good. They know that they're good, they met the requirements.
Just a thought for maybe moving forward. Maybe we could officially expand that work release type program to something like maybe a work, individual study, internship. I don't know. Maybe just expand, and if we put it on paper, maybe some students will go out and maybe they'll determine, hey, I can maybe learn this on my own. Maybe take this course. Maybe that's too much to ask. But anyway, we could inspire kids to learn outside the classroom. I think
Just
that's
think of
great.
work release as a prison kind.
I know. I'm sorry. I think that's the term though that.
Well, we call it technically senior release.
Senior release, okay.
And where is that policy spelled out? Is that in the policies as opposed to the course?
Yeah, and there's part of the course like this. There's
It
a
is in
form.
here somewhere?
Yeah, there's a form that they fill out somewhere.
I think it's at the very end.
I looked for it before. I never did find
Or it
it.
might be a separate
Anyone know where it
attachment
is?
on the guidance website.
But basically it is, if they
There's
meet
the
the
graduation
requirements,
requirements, but it doesn't.
if they meet the requirements, they have the 24.65, the parents sign off on it, they met the electives, and then I get a form that says so-and-so has completed the requirements of X amount of core and X amount of electives, and so on and so
I'm just
forth.
concerned because I know people in the district don't know that. And I was just wondering how it's being communicated, and should it be communicated right here
We
through the
can.
graduation
Let me
requirements?
double check that when I get back to the office tomorrow, okay? Because the kids know it.
I know.
The kids do know it.
They do know it. I've spoken
Absolutely.
to parents that were not
I believe
familiar
the
with
kids
that.
would.
Yeah, they know that they can get out.
Oh, you better believe they'll know.
Yeah.
That sounds like prison release.
I have, on that note, before we move on, now that we've made our recommendation to keep it the same, and I think we have to take that to the board because it was something we never approved the course selection in full, only the courses. So I think that's a recommendation we have to make to the full board. But do you have an update on how the a la carte registration is going? By any chance, it's not on the agenda, but I think this is important.
I'm pleased. I mean, seriously. In most areas. Science, not too pleased.
Okay.
SAT prep, as of today, or as of last week, I'm sorry. As of last week, we have enough, we have 14.
Okay.
Film is literature, we're at 19. Mythology, we're up to 17, which was very good. Organic chem and natural disasters are both at 10. Nobody likes meteorology at the high school,
Oh, really?
which shocks me because that's what I would.
Yeah, I would have loved to have taken that.
Current events is 16. Pop culture and history is up to 17.
Great.
17?
Yeah, I'm really pleased with that so far.
AP, European history?
Oh, no, sorry. No, that was even higher.
Oh, great.
AP European history, 22.
Awesome. Great.
The winner.
Yeah.
Meteorology was one of them? I didn't
In
see it on this.
meteorology, not a lot were interested.
Nobody cares.
Impression, it's not even on here.
It should have been. It should be. Is it the most recent one? We just re-updated it again. After
Okay.
everything there.
Thank you. So no one was
Zero.
interested?
I haven't gotten fresh numbers. I'll get the fresh numbers Wednesday.
Yeah, it's better than 2.
Yeah, thank you, everybody, for adding the stuff. I know there's all this talk about things that we're cutting and all of that, but this is stuff
Yeah.
we're adding that directly helps students. So that's great.
Any feedback from parents on it? Or?
None.
It's too bad. Well,
Kids, yes.
Good.
Especially
Yeah.
mythology was a biggie.
Really?
That was the one that.
Take an adventure to strange worlds and travel on exciting adventures with brave heroes like Hercules and Percy Jackson?
Yeah, I actually had
Is that
kids
what
in my
sold it?
office who aren't really English people, but have said to me, like,
great.
"Oh, I'm really excited. I want to take mythology and
great.
the film is literature class because they're not really that
Nice.
into regular English." So, but that
And
stuff interests them.
The
So.
teachers are trying to sell it
Good.
to. We're into marketing.
Great. It's great news.
Need to have a meteorologist come out from the television station.
Yeah, I'm
Mark.
sure Ed
Don't you
Hunt
do
would
weather
come out.
bug at the high school?
I believe so. We did it here.
I know there's a machine in one of the classrooms.
I thought we had a camera and all set up that's tied into KYW. Is that
Not that I know
not
of.
that kind of thing? You would know if you had it.
I know Kathy Byler's out of Phoenix.
Is that?
Kathy Byler, the meteorologist for Channel 3, she's out of Phoenix, so she went to Phoenix High.
All right. So,
So what has been presented to the board about this a la carte and the credits and all that?
well, we're going to make a recommendation to to keep the credits required for graduation at 24.65. I'm not sure. We approved the courses,
Correct.
but we did not approve the rest of the course selection guide officially. So I think,
Well, technically,
do we
you
need
can-
to?
if you approve the courses and they're part of the course selection guide,
Well, no, because I know we were withholding not approving
The credits.
the credits. So that would be the rest of the course selection guide that I'm thinking we need to
Right.
approve. I just want to make sure
So
we're getting
you
all
just
of
want
our
to
ducks in a row.
present, you just want to approve the course selection guide as
Yeah.
as is,
I just want to
right?
make sure
I'm
that
fine with
everything
that.
is.
You guys?
yeah, I'm really, I'm looking at, then the following year, I'd like to at least double some of those numbers. I really, really would.
Let's see how it all plays out.
Yeah. Great. Up next, study halls. Mrs. Torchio, would you like to make a presentation?
I'm
here?
going to pass to Mr. Henkel and to Mrs. Rexroad. I'm passing.
Well, the idea of, we're walking a fine line trying to reduce these study halls. Number one, as of today, you cannot make students take credits. You cannot do it. If they want to take their 24.65 and they've literally accumulated virtually all, and they can take all those study halls. That's fact. So we're trying to look at some things. We looked at, if you have the study halls, and we talked about the last time, pulling students out of the study halls for remediation. That's where the first look at it, through remediation. Now, we will not know those numbers basically till the end of July, beginning of August, where we again can require students who are not scored and pass the Keystones to come out for Algebra 1, to come out for Lit, to come out for Bio. Okay? Now, the problem is how we're going to do that remediation. We'll pull them out of the large groups, and then we'll put them in classrooms, or more importantly, into the computer labs, because we do own Odyssey. And Jenny did a situation where she took, if it was today, teachers who would be available at different, every period of the day, every day of the cycle for remediation. Some are good, some were very light. So there's certain periods that we may not be able to pull for remediation, and those are over the lunch. The lunches for the light ones, because of the overlap of time. Freshmen go in at 10:00 whatever, and they have a half an hour for lunch, whereas you have everybody else are in a 42-minute class, and then you have the freshmen going out and starting a class, so you have that 12-minute gap kind of thing. So that's where the problems occur. But it's something that's doable. When we get our scores back, then we start to make some decisions. I look at it as very similar as when I was here at the middle school, that with the reading classes, we got the scores back. A student who was below basic, you had this reading class. A student who was basic had another type of reading class. And at the time, that was not an option. That was not an option. If a parent called up and said, hey, listen, I don't want my student in that reading class, well, you're in it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the state of Pennsylvania has made these decisions, and we have to act on these decisions.
Well, and the incoming ninth grade have to pass
Must.
the Keystone test in order to graduate until they become a senior, and then we can become creative with projects. But
Right.
up until that time, through 9, 10, 11th grade, we need them to pass.
So if the student does not,
right, then they need to go in.
Algebra 1, guess
right,
what? We're
right,
going remediation.
Right, so you're going to determine how many years you're going into remediation.
And the other thing that makes it a little bit difficult is that when we do the remediation, the teacher who does the remediation, even if it is that they are on Odyssey, has to be an English certified, science certified,
Right.
or math
You gotta be
certified
qualified.
teacher.
Correct.
So that kind of
juggling
limits
that.
too as well, because those teachers aren't always as available as some of our other ones are. So that makes it a little bit difficult too. You have to make sure that they're available at that time in order to do it.
So it's a juggling act. It's doable. We're going to reach everybody, probably not based on the teachers being highly qualified, but as soon as the numbers come in and the scores come in, then we'll look at it and start looking at their study halls and who's available and having remediation classes.
Well, and maybe we can start to look at our study halls and filter students into that study hall by teacher that, if we have the certified teacher, the math teacher that has the study hall, then that's the math remediation study hall. And we try to set it up that way. I know that won't happen every
Right.
time, but at least,
We can give it a shot to do it as best as possible.
right.
I have a question,
Yeah.
point of clarification. Mr. Hinckley, did I hear you right? If a student has 24.65, we cannot make him,
No,
why?
because the board has determined, this district has determined 24.65 credits is the number of credits you need to graduate.
Okay.
You need X amount of credits in this subject area, X amount in this subject area. They have met those requirements.
With that being said,
If they want to take a study hall,
if they don't have a study hall as an option,
What if
they
it's
have
not
to take a
offered?
class.
Yeah.
if we do not have any,
I
Correct.
think that's what we're trying to get.
Right.
don't offer any study halls.
Don't know if that's
I mean, that's what we're going to have to be working
Right.
on for the next year coming. 'Cause
Study halls, we don't schedule study halls. Study halls are scheduled after everything else is there and you find the holes. You don't schedule, you don't have, okay, this period is a study hall period. No, you don't know study halls until the schedule's built, and then you fill in the holes with where students are after their course selections are done.
Like, for example, a student will say that they want to take these courses. So then we have to make their schedule, and those courses have to fit into their schedule. And so those courses may not all fit based on what they want to take. They may not all work together. It's kind of like a big puzzle.
Right.
So unfortunately, sometimes you end up with some kids who don't get to take everything that they want because it doesn't all fit together, or they might get everything they want and then and that works out great. But usually it works out that they don't always get everything. And in the summer, when it's August, when they have a hole, you can't just say, oh, well, now this kid's going to take meteorology because that fits in there. I mean, when you didn't give them that option in the first place, you can't just throw them into something that they may not be qualified for, interested in, whatever. I mean, that's one of the issues that you come across, is just that it doesn't.
So in that scenario,
reverse it though.
Couldn't you end up with one kid in one study hall? Is that what you're saying?
No. What we're saying is this: you have Tom Hankel. I did my schedule. I chose 6.5 credits, okay, out of a possible 8 credits. I have 1.5 credits laying out there. So after the 6.5 credits have been scheduled, where those 1.5 credit of open areas would be become study halls or senior release, or something to that extent. So you don't determine the study halls and where they are until after everybody's schedule is built.
But you're letting the credits be the driver, and that's why I started to say reverse it.
How?
How many
reverse?
I think study halls are a costly waste of teachers.
Correct.
And I think it's an absolute waste, unless it's remediation.
Correct.
How many periods a day are teachers supposed to be teaching?
Their schedule is, we try to maximize it at most 6.
6. So if you have every teacher scheduled to teach 6 classes a day, there are no holes. There are no study halls for a kid to choose.
What do we do with them?
They have to pick something.
I think that
That has to be a board directive.
Well, and I think another thing just to think about, because I know I hear this a lot from some of my students as they're in my office, some of them especially are athletes or are students who work. One of the things that is very important to them is that they have that period in the day for study hall, because when they're finished with school, they're working or they're in a sport and they don't have that time for tutoring. They go to tutoring during study hall. They don't have that time to talk to a teacher that they need to get help from. They don't have that time to work on their homework. They don't have that time to make up a test. A lot of them make up tests during study halls. So that's something else that, I do understand why, we don't like to have the study halls in the schedule, but that's another thing that parents and students both say they're glad their kid has a study hall, because I don't know what my kid would do if, they were finished school at 2:30 and then went to baseball, got home at 9 o'clock, didn't have time during the day to make up a test that they may have missed because they were sick, didn't have time to go to tutoring, didn't have time to get their homework done, and now they're at 9 o'clock at night and now they're doing their homework. So I realize that, like I said, that study halls aren't, the optimal thing to do, but in a lot of cases, they're something that the kids really, and parents do appreciate.
Well, for lack of a better term, I don't mean this the way it sounds, but it's really a safety net in that scenario, because my kids are involved in the same thing. And
it is. It's you will have.
I don't like it. I'd rather them be in class.
I think it's another reason we should look into block scheduling at some point in time.
Looking
Everybody
into-
has study hall at the same time.
They don't have study hall at all in block scheduling.
They're called. They're like
It's an
free
MPP.
period.
It's more of like everybody has the time where they're working at the end of the day in a homeroom, and that's where you can go to the teacher X for support.
Right.
You make an appointment and schedule it. But
Right.
I think that what we need to do moving forward, because at this point it's May and the course selection book is already in and kids have selected. I think we need to look at our process of adopting our high school course selection book starting in September, so that when we get to January, when we want to adopt it by the board, that we took the time to really go through it and be able to, we can then see how your a la carte courses have worked out. And
Well, this was a unique year based on the changes of the board and the change of curriculum instruction committee and so on and so forth. I mean, there was 2.5 months of non-lag, and Rich would be surprised when the number, and I'm not saying bad, good, or whatever, when students are choosing their coursework, parents will say, I want you to have at least 3 study halls a cycle. I want you to have at least a study hall a day, or 6 study halls in a 6-day cycle, because of everything that you're involved in. The parents will tell the student. They say, well, I go to them up. Well, don't forget, you go to work after school, or else you're involved in athletics or some type of other things, and you need that time.
I know we're talking about study halls and just having them. Has there been, I know in the past we talked about the size of study halls. Has there been any consideration given to that?
Well, you said you had wanted them in mass. What we'll do is we'll look at it in mass per se, after remediate, see how then we pull out for remediation. The key is how many kids are coming out for remediation.
Okay.
Because I thought you said you had some large study halls.
We do now. Yeah, we do.
And I think that's the question, why aren't they all large study halls?
Majestic?
Well, no, I think some. Well, I mean, I think some of it was that it's actually a lot more productive for kids to be in smaller groups. So, for instance, if you're a kid in a study hall of say 25 students in a teacher's classroom, you're much better managed. There's less distraction. The teacher has a lot more one-on-one time with you, because there are kids who have study halls with teachers that they ask for help. So it's much easier to do that in a smaller area than it is when you're 100 kids with 1 or 2 teachers. Now there's 100 kids all around you trying to study and do work and get things done. 100 kids who might be working together with a partner. 100 kids who, many of them might want the teacher to help them with something. So it's much more conducive to what they're built for, which is study time, help, etc., when they're in a smaller group than if they're in a large group.
I hear what you're saying, and I heard what you said about the athletes and the kids with jobs, and you're looking at a percentage of the whole. But there are also kids in the study halls that are texting on their phones and listening to music and going on the internet. And
and when you're in a group of 100 with many people texting or whatever, as opposed
25,
to 25,
you're still doing that.
Oh, yes,
and that's what I'm saying is it's you're looking at the cost of a teacher.
Oh, I understand where you're coming from. I do. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate and explain to you why study halls are the way they are and why we have kids who do want them, and why putting them into one just because.
Unfortunately, you can't decide which kids really want to study and which kids want to text.
Oh, that's right.
I'll look at it a different way. You have one teacher for 100 kids. That's what we're talking, right? Roughly.
I was talking 2, but go ahead.
200?
No, 2 for 100.
Let's say there's one teacher for 100 or one teacher for 50 or whatever. And you're in a large area. Okay. Something happens. The first words out of my mouth, or more importantly an attorney's mouth, is going to be, did we use prudent judgment in subjecting that teacher to student ratio? And we wouldn't win that.
Okay, you and I had this discussion once before. How many kids do you have in the cafeteria at one time?
300.
And how many teachers are in there?
We have, how many adults are in there?
How many adults are in there?
Anywhere from 5 to 6.
That's 1 for 50, isn't it? Isn't that the same ratio you just talked about?
No, but you're looking at...
It's the same ratio you just talked about, 1 for 50. So if something happens, what's the difference?
I would argue that point in a court of law in a cafeteria, because they're not all in there for 42 straight minutes. You have some in the hallway, you have some in there, you have some different places. You don't, for maybe 10 to 15 minutes, you have 300, well now 285, 300 or 285 students sitting down at one time. Okay? So, I'm just saying, there is damage now to furniture because of students sitting there unloosening bolts.
Yeah.
Teacher has already fallen, and we have 1,000 seats in the auditorium. To ask 1 or 2 teachers to go up and down to make sure somebody's not going like this would be...
What about running like an educational series from the History Channel? Like I know some high school boys are real impressed with the Men Who Made America, and it was just riveting. It was an 8-hour series.
I'd be all for that. I mean, seriously, I would.
After our tour, we were talking about the old junior high cafeteria. And there you don't have the auditorium seats to damage or anything. You've got laminated tables.
Right, yeah, down at the... And so it's like over there now.
And there's ways to keep them occupied. That's what you're suggesting.
That's a thought.
But that doesn't mean that they will be
Science
occupied,
series.
unfortunately.
It would be,
It's never
I
guaranteed.
guess some kids could,
Right.
some students would sign up to take the history series and maybe do a little quiz or something, pass, fail, to pique their interest.
Or if they
The
had a
ones
study
that
hall, we
want,
could
the
move
ones
them.
that want to watch it would, and the ones that want to text would, but
One way or the other, you can require
Well,
silence.
here's my concern is, what are you thinking of doing with that teacher? If we're putting 100 students in an auditorium or wherever with 2 teachers, and it would have theoretically been 4 teachers having 25 students, what are you thinking happens to those teachers that now don't have responsibility to study hall?
I don't know, where'd you get the teachers for these out of court courses?
Same type of place, so we're already going to be losing teachers from the study halls, I'm assuming, because they had duties at this point that we're changing, correct?
Yes and no, but you have X amount of students. So instead of having maybe 100 students who have POD, you maybe have 75 who have that, 25 who have the other. So it's the same number. Or as opposed to an elective of something else, they take this 0.5 as the elective.
Okay.
So-
So it's just a swap out of whatever elective it is?
Correct.
Okay. So if what would we do? That would be my question. Because at this point, I'm not really sure, other than us increasing the amount of credits that you need to graduate, and saying that here's your course selection, here's what you get to choose from, as you know, whatever grade, and we're going to increase credits. I'm not sure what else we're having that teacher do, or what happens to that teacher, because at this point it wouldn't be declining enrollment that would be, pushing forward for a teacher to, be reduced or whatever. It would be us taking the students and making them a larger group. So I think that what we need to do, like I said earlier, is to take this course selection book moving forward in the next year and refining it, and us determining that we want more classes and students have to have more credits to graduate. That would be one option.
Yeah, I like Carol's idea. And just real quick, if we have 100 students, let's say, in this study hall, and we have 3 teachers, and we were going to move them to smaller areas where it's more conducive, that's fact. But okay, for these 8 hours, we're going to go somewhere and we're going to watch this series. And it doesn't have to be for credit, doesn't have to be for anything other than simple learning and knowledge. And how many given that opportunity, whether it's...
But do we have students opting into study hall now to do this? Just instead of staying in a course that we want them to stay in?
No, wouldn't be notified till after study halls are all.
Okay, all right.
Till after all, and you're talking maybe in the year.
Okay,
Say, okay, for these 5 weeks in October, we're running this, and then maybe some other series, a science series has come about, or a history series, or something like that, or a movie that has a message that's real pertinent. And I'm just thinking, remember the Titans or something, that's really pertinent, going with anti-bullying and acceptance, for that maybe
Right.
too. So I kind of,
Or
I like your,
Pennsylvania history, something relevant,
I like your idea. It's just
area.
kind of formulating how that would work.
Right.
Okay, appreciate it if you consider it.
I think
For now, we have to let this.
Right,
see how
I
this
think we
fleshes
have
out.
to, I think we really have to pull apart our course selection and review and, either add in and refine it, because even if you do have a study hall, you shouldn't have more than one study hall a day. And I know that that's another concern of this committee, that
Right.
children are sitting in multiple
3
study
a
halls.
day.
I think there's a bunch of things that we need to talk about moving forward. Would extending each class period a little bit longer, additional time to a class, would that then take away, the need for one more class, which means one less study hall? I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there. But I think that's something that as a group, administrative group, we need to look at and, come back to this committee moving forward with recommendations on how we're going to,
Yeah, you and I have touched on some of this. Yeah, I don't know what you, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know all the ins and outs of what you do with the teachers, but
Yeah.
I also, we're going to have a budget workshop later tonight. And we have teachers in a study hall, and some of it may be worthwhile, some of it's babysitting.
Right.
And that's a very expensive babysit. You have teachers sitting in the cafeteria. I think that's a waste of money.
well, and unfortunately, we don't have other adults to be able to be monitoring the cafeteria.
But I've even thought of that, and it's a little off topic here, but it fits in the same thing. If you look at the cost of a teacher versus the cost of, say, a security guard, which costs more?
It depends on what level teacher we're talking about, but typically the teacher.
So,
Right.
because when Tom and I talked about this, we talked about, I mentioned aides, and he said, well, the aides wouldn't have the authority of a teacher, but the security guard would.
They would have more leverage probably.
So and I'm just looking
Right.
at doing the same work at a lesser cost. So, and maybe it can't be done for this September,
No.
but it's stuff we need to
Right,
look at.
and that's what I'm saying.
Again,
We have-
can't we visit block scheduling? Because I just, from what I know of it,
We
it's an
definitely
efficient
can.
way. of
We
We
doing
tried.
did too, yeah. We just
I mean,
missed
not
it.
from a savings point of
No,
view. I mean,
it
it's
wouldn't.
an
You wouldn't
efficient
save.
way to deliver education now.
It wouldn't be a savings. What we wouldn't want it to be is we'd have to evaluate whether or not it would increase any staff for the courses.
And I'm fine
right.
with that. But my understanding is that there are fewer offerings each time, each semester. And
But that fits in the same thing I just said. The discussion you and I had with the parents, you're not going to get block scheduling, and by the September, it's going to be the
I'm not
following.
interested in it.
It
Yeah,
would
for
be
the next year,
following
we have to
September.
start the process a year out so
Yes.
that we
Yeah.
can really thoroughly go through it. Yeah.
And the information that Carol and I did get, it sounds to me like it makes sense.
Right, and I had somebody ready to come in, and we
Yeah, I
can talk
remember
about
that.
that. We can
Can
take
we?
a trip.
We have a public comment. If you could just state your name before.
Julia Olson. I was just wondering, you have this requirement for graduation for, your number of required credits for graduation. Could you also, in addition to that, add and plus you also have to meet a minimum number of classes you take per year? Like say like six and a half classes have to be full per cycle or whatever. So that would give you sometimes maybe two, but most of the time one study hall, and then you'd get those kids in those electives because they'd be required to.
Well, if you
I don't know if you
Well,
can.
if you do 6.5,
I don't know what the numbers are.
it would be,
My kids in middle school.
yeah. 6.5, you're running at 26 credits, so you're telling them they have to take more than required to
Well,
graduate.
what is the requirement for graduation?
24.65.
It's a little less than 6 1/4.
Now, one
So
thing,
you
So
can't
that's how
really do
you
it unless
change
you
it.
change
We have
Unless
to
you change it.
but some
To
school
lower the
districts
credits for the
require
courses.
X amount of
Yeah.
credits in their freshman,
That'll get 'em.
sophomore, and junior years.
Okay.
So you really funnel it in those 3 years.
And then that's where you get more students on senior release or the electives and things
Got
like
it.
that.
But there's the thing, could you limit the credits they get freshman, sophomore, and junior year so they still have a full class load senior year?
Well, like my kid has one study hall next year in ninth grade because he's taken a full load. If you limit him, he's going to be very sad. He's able to do band or something else. Yeah.
If you limit them to 6.5 credits a year, they'd have 19.5 after 3 years. So taking 5 credits the following year would really leave them with only time for one study hall at most. Can you do that?
Well, why do we want to do that if we want to facilitate them leaving for a work release? We want them to be able to work towards
How
that,
many
to
are
have a
doing that,
couple.
though? I mean, of all the kids in study halls, how many are leaving on the senior release or whatever?
Do we have that number?
Do we have that number? Do you know how many?
I still think it's an option if
How many
the
students are
student's
leaving
ready
on
to go
senior
out and
release?
start in
If
the
I had to
workforce.
estimate, I'd say that
Why would
it
we?
might be like 20 to 30 kids.
Okay.
And there's a couple that come in late in the morning as opposed to the other
But
way
if you're
around.
I think the
limiting,
goal is to make sure they don't have any study halls in senior year.
if you're telling a student that they have a possibility of taking 8 credits, and you're only allowing them to take 6.5, how about that student who wants to take, they specialize in art and they specialize in music also, or they're a band and a chorus and an art. You're telling them they can't.
All right, use your same scenario. So they take 8 a year for 3 years, and that means they get to their senior year and all they need is .65 to graduate.
That kid won't do
Yeah, but
No, I'm saying.
Yeah, but they've never done
Yeah,
that.
Same
the student
scenario.
doing that wouldn't be the one who,
I think if you do that, I know the parents in this community, if you tell these parents, and now I have parents out here I know, and you say, okay, freshman year, you're allowed to take 6.5 credits only, and they're looking at going into, they're looking at their college career now. I think that would hurt.
Yeah, I think there's an issue with, you have students who...
You took more.
I probably, I didn't have many study halls, but the thing about the end of your high school career, you could take those AP classes that I like to talk about, and that can get you college credit. Freshman and sophomore year, you really don't have too many options, even though I hope we can add some at some point, and we have already added at least one, but I think if you're capping students early on, then you limit the ability to take those courses, which I think are a whole lot more beneficial because you can get that college credit.
And also, we have started preliminarily checking into with RAC. Maybe that is also an option and maybe more enticing to some students to take the classes that you do get college credit for. So they can go, they're leaving with us with 6, 9 college credits. So it would maybe entice them to take more classes.
I will tell you also, for certain populations of students, we have parents in the community who are interested on their own getting the kids ahead by taking courses ahead of time in the summer through other opportunities that they're taking on. So some of the kids coming in order to get the additional AP classes, they're taking on the rigor in the summer so that they get prerequisites under their belt and have more opportunity to take a larger breadth of courses.
Something I'd like to see possibly at some point, going back to the study halls quickly while we're still on that topic, maybe, I know that it's possible to take courses and study independently for AP courses and then take the test independent. Would it be possible to maybe set up some type of environment where a student, let's say they wanted to take AP United States Government, could they go to a computer lab or maybe the office up front and just sit on a computer and learn that material so they could take the test on their own? It's at no cost to the district, but they could earn that AP credit instead of sitting in a study hall taking a class.
Odyssey offers that.
Let me check. We can do it. I just want to make sure with AP, the AP board.
Okay.
We have to have a teacher who would be like a teacher qualified to
Okay, because we do already
overseeing that.
because it is the school who's doing it. It's
So
not
we
a
have to
student on
make
their own.
sure-
We could send students to a lab for world language, but they have to be at least a world language of some sort certified person. And the kid could then take Mandarin Chinese, for instance, even though we only have a world language Spanish teacher there, but that's considered highly qualified for the state of Pennsylvania, and they could work on
So
something
it's a
like that.
bureaucratic rule we have to meet. Wonderful. Okay. All right.
But I think moving on for the sake of the committee is that
Yeah.
for the 14-15 school year, we are going to do our due diligence to examine study halls and making sure that we are reducing them to the point where students are having the opportunity to have one, not multiple, and that we can look at, what students do actually get to opt in for a study hall.
Okay.
You know.
All right.
Letting data, drive the decision making on that, especially for the younger grades and with regards to Keystone testing.
And hopefully, again, students will enroll in these a la carte classes as well. And if we can provide more opportunities for students, hopefully it'll kind of
and
weed
that's really
itself.
the goal. That's really the goal of those. That hopefully they'll be so interested in those classes they'll take them, and then we won't have those study hall kids.
And that's the best way to do
the study hall
it.
kids we do have, hopefully we can funnel them into these remediation things. So then, again, we've reduced the numbers.
Or else we
You sort of have to see how it
We'd
plays
be
out.
creative and we make a study hall for the athlete or for the band student or for the student who, it's easier to leave school for early dismissal, especially if you're a couple sport athlete to know that you're leaving study hall opposed to, math or English class that you're, missing every single day. So,
Okay.
well, and the
Yeah, we
state's not
tried.
allowing us to do that.
We tried, Angela.
Yeah.
See, there are those, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but there are those students who, athletically, musically, or whatever, have been given a gift. And that gift could pay for their entire college career. And they go out and they have to practice at different hours, whether it's gymnastics or something like that. And they relish their study. I mean, they need them, or because I'd rather that than they say, okay, I'm going cyber.
I think we really need to look at a period at the end of the day that's a common planning period or common work period for all students, that everybody's sitting in a homeroom, whatever that time frame is. You know, if it's the last 30 minutes, because early dismissals for sports usually start around 2:10, you know, so I think we need to examine how we're delivering our classes and how they're set up, and I think that will correct itself then.
I mean, you know what, I'm not looking at trying to limit anybody's credits.
No, I know
what
that.
I'm looking at is
Right.
if the state does nothing with taxes, if the state does
Right.
nothing
The best
with
use of
pensions,
instructional time. Right.
our budget's going to keep increasing, and the money has to come from somewhere. And I'm just looking at the cost of a teacher sitting in a group of people.
I agree. I do. That's
essentially doing nothing.
Right.
Not being productive.
Right. So we beat that one up, but we'll keep coming back.
Yeah, I have a question. Before band was a graded subject, and then once the school district found out that you couldn't charge band students a fee because it's part of their curriculum, even though it was after school, you decided to take it out of the curriculum, and it was just an activity. What's the difference with sports and just say, if there was no activity tied to football, why couldn't that be counted as an accredited?
We looked at that, Shane, and I talked to somebody in the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and they were adamant. And it is to give credit, they must be taught, this class must be taught by a certified teacher and following a state curriculum. And I said, well, how about it? I live in Phoenixville. Phoenixville has, you get a half a credit if you participate in sport and or band. And they said, when somebody complains, the Department of Ed will be on them.
Okay, so that's...
I have it in an email from the Department of Ed that they cited, I forget the chapter, and I sent it out. It's...
So someone would have complained about band at the time?
I don't know. I'm just talking about phys ed. If you were involved in an athletic contest, athletic event, I mean, and band, because the physical activity that's involved in band, Phoenixville, you get credit. Okay. So we tried to talk, and then I have an email from the Department of Ed saying, that's a no-no. Violation of, I forget which one it is, but, you know, the code, PA code.
I'd like to move on now. I'm sorry if I forgot everything. We have item 7, class rank. This is something that Mr. Martino wanted on the agenda.
Yeah, let me, and we won't use names since there's so many members of the public here, but one of the parents approached me, and I know she approached you about her child's class rank.
Last year?
No, last month, last week. About how it updates like daily, but you know who I'm talking about?
It's I've had numerous parents talk about class rank.
But anyway, what she said to me made sense. She said if Connor takes a test and Carol takes a test, and Connor's teacher records those test grades, but Carol's teacher doesn't, his class rank can improve and hers would drop. And the only question I really have is why doesn't it go on the transcript at the end of the marking period when all the test scores have been recorded?
It does. But certain individuals, to get into certain activities, need mid-marking period rank in class where they stand. So we try to give them the most up-to-date.
Does it actually show itself on our student or on the every single day on,
No.
on, what are we calling it?
We have to go
Our
in and get it.
Board. What
I have
is
to
it?
go in and get
On
it.
the East Pool system.
Yes. You have to go in, so it's not something that the parent can see, or if they're
No,
going
this
into
is
their,
the request.
okay,
Your guidance.
okay.
So at the end of every marking period, we get the finalized where they have,
For every student,
yes, at the end of the marking period.
yes.
Okay, but if I need something, if I'm going to attend some kind of pre-college something,
And they need a
and
transcript.
they need it
Okay,
by,
I
say,
get it.
let's say needed by March 25th.
But you couldn't just print it out as of the end of
As
the
of the
last
end of
marking
the
period?
previous
You
marking
can,
period?
but then some people will want to check mid-marking period to see if their rank has gone up or down at that time.
We just
It's
don't like
never going to
that.
be accurate.
No.
No,
It's
but-
never going to be an accurate reflection
But
based on.
the group that you're going to doesn't know that. And that's
Well,
No,
not,
but,
I'm
but
not
the
sure
person,
that's
the person that approached me and
honest.
approached you, apparently their child's ranking had dropped because of it not being up to date.
that's not quite,
It could,
Well,
though. If everyone has the same requirement, the only time that really is reflective of the child's true standing is after everybody has entered. all of
Correct.
the-
Right.
I'm not going to go
Anything in between is
It fluctuates daily.
Yeah.
spurious,
Right.
yeah.
So,
So this individual needed something mid-market period.
So why wouldn't we have printed off the last,
Well, we did.
print off her standing, her class
I'm not going
rank?
to go in with, it's more of a private conversation.
well, just moving forward, I think if this is just my idea, if somebody comes in the middle of the marking period and requests their class rank, I think the most accurate would be the one from the previous marking period, and then you can only get it 4 times a year after first
Right.
semester, after second.
Is that a policy has to be changed then?
I don't know. I
As
don't
opposed to
think it's in
curriculum?
Because I don't think that's a policy, that's just,
Yeah.
it's
Practice.
an administrative
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
Right.
This person just came in and asked. I said, okay, let's see where they stand now. If they're higher now than they were at the end of the marking period, and if it will benefit your child
could
to
use
go
it to college,
off to this,
not competing
this,
with-
this activity, you know, I'm just trying to help out the person.
Yeah, I understand. I don't know. I think consistency is important though.
Yeah, I don't think we should be trying to help out the person because the number's not valid. Because all the
They're
marks
valid
are
as a day.
Yeah.
But is it for me to decide that? Or is it for
I
that
think we
college
need
or that
policy.
place to say, we need that class rank effective at the end of the semester, the end of the marking period, because these places know.
Well, and I
Why,
think,
why should I worry about they're
I-
just running
yeah.
a class rank? Why is it up to me to say that because it's not at the end of a marking period,
because there's
You're
so much
presenting an
competition
erroneous
between students,
statistic.
right?
That's erroneous.
And there's so much
That is an
competition.
erroneous number.
well, I'm not going to,
There's so much competition between students that if you stick with the last marking period, regardless of who it is, that's just the way it is. And that's what I would tell you to do moving
Fine.
forward, yeah, definitely.
whereas everybody else isn't, but we'll do that.
Whereas
Well, but
everybody
that-
within the
Everyone's
school
doing
is
that?
right.
You
yeah.
better believe, I know high school principals who absolutely, if a parent comes in and says, can I have my GPA and class rank as of today because I need it, they'll run it and see you, absolutely.
So if Connor's ranked 3rd in his class today, but he was ranked 2nd in his class at the end of the marking period, you're going to print out the one that was 2nd? Because that benefits Connor?
Yeah, absolutely. I would.
And it's wrong.
I think something.
That's the practice.
What's I about to say here? It would be beneficial, I guess, if you had just, I don't know, some type of firm. No, or what you could do if you wanted to provide it at the end of every day, then it's fine. But every teacher needs to have the grades in as they come in. But that isn't possible.
That's
No,
impossible.
it's the end of the
Yeah,
marking
so-
period. So the previous marking period, and that's it. And that's it.
Okay.
And that's consistent.
That is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, moving on then to item 8, Common Core update. There's one more thing I want to get to. You provided us. Thank you for this. This is great.
Nice.
Bunch of information. This
I
is.
have never heard him say thank you as much as he has.
Oh, no, I mean this is great. I think this is phenomenal.
Duly noted.
Yeah, thank you. It's on the minutes here. Are there any questions about the Common Core update? I know we just got it. We haven't read it, but do you have anything?
I don't have anything to add to it. I just printed it out for your reading pleasure, and so that, you know, if you have any questions as you peruse it, give me a call.
What would you say are the top 3 things, or the top 3 or 4 things that you see from your standpoint?
From my standpoint is the Chapter 4 revisions, I would tell you the first page, and how it's affecting what we do in curriculum. The elimination, on page 2, the elimination of state prescribed strategic plan, which is now changed to comprehensive plan, which we are in the process of going through, because that's huge, which goes on at the bottom of page 2. And I think the way that, what the Keystone exams are doing with regards to high school graduation. So those would be the things that I would tell you. And honestly, the Keystones go all the way to the end, because then there's, the waiver and talking about the project and all that other stuff. So that's how the Common Core is affecting high school.
Isn't
I
this huge?
have, sorry, no, I have another thing then, it's not on the agenda.
Isn't this huge that they've decided not to develop the
The
social
history,
studies?
yes,
and
that is very huge.
This is huge.
Yes.
Well, are there? I imagine we were already ramping up for them.
We know not to act too swiftly with regards to PD, so that we didn't want to get people too wrapped up into it. So we were just kind of standing at bay, and we were quite happy to say, "Okay, troops recede, go sit down."
For the rest of the committee, could you explain what was supposed to be phased in over the next?
What was
4
supposed to
years?
happen was, right now we're currently testing students in Algebra 1, biology, and literature. Literature has really no grade basis. I guess we're grabbing kids that are in 10th grade for literature. Biology is a 10th grade subject, and Algebra 1 is 8th grade and 9th grade. So what the state was going to do was they were going to offer up another test for kids to have to pass in order to graduate, and that was going to be social studies. Although I don't believe that was going to be rolled into one of the courses that you had to get a proficient score on. They were more or less going to baseline, but nonetheless they were going to test, and they were going to take more time, from us educators on, presenting a test to students to take for 3 days. So the state has decided that they're going to just stick with the 3 tests, math, English, and biology, and that's it. And they're done with developing, additional Keystone tests.
Do you have sufficient copies to pass out to the rest of the board?
I do not tonight. I only have 2 extra, but I'll make sure that I do. I have it electronically on my computer, so I'll forward it.
Email it to them.
Yeah.
Oh, now we have enough.
They're dropping theirs in left and right. Tom, you should keep yours and study it.
They're for the class of 20.
The 9th grade class coming in, which I don't want to know what year they graduate, because that's my daughter.
2019. And then there was going to be requirements on class of 2020.
The 9th grade class this year.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, I have one more quick thing that I did not include on the agenda. I just remembered it quickly. Not allowed? No, I got a text message a few months ago from one of my friends who graduated with me, and he was wondering about the finals policy at the high school. He had heard that it changed to a B that you need to have to be exempt from finals. Was that just erroneous information? Okay, so you still need an A to be exempt?
No, some of the teachers came to me and said that they want to hold the kids to the end for seniors. That if they don't have a chance, they want them to look at to be able to exempt from finals. So there's a big discussion about finals.
Okay.
The big discussion about finals is simply this. When you go across high school, you're saying, we are preparing kids for college. Well, in a way, that's not true. In all of my years of college, I've never taken a test that combines from September to May. Never.
Right, you take this half a year.
Yeah.
So I had talked to the departments about semester finals, more in line with what colleges do. Midterms, whatever you want to call it. And the problem that some of them have is, well, students who we need to keep them going for seniors in mentally to say, hey, listen, they'll be exempt from a final, but if they look and say, I can't get an A,
then they're just done.
They're done. But now with someone, because they're seniors, say, we're going to let you, if you get a B, final for a B, you're exempt from that final. And that came from the department chairs in a way to, so the kids don't at the very end just bag it. Whether or not a student.
Well, I know even some students who have gotten, when they get accepted into their dream school,
they're done.
They're done, even if they're a straight A student.
They're done. So that's the reason. My perfect world would be semester finals.
Yeah.
That would be because that's more, quote, college-like.
Yeah. That's a good point.
I mean, absolutely it is.
What's stopping that?
We have to bring it before the committee and then go forward. It's something that I would like to look at for
Would you?
next year. That's
Well,
what
yeah,
I-
if we
It
could-
is something
Could
we
you?
could do locally.
I think we all like that idea.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
let's.
I think that's a good idea.
Because,
Can we endorse that now?
I mean, because I'm all for that, because some staff members who are more traditional, like the year-long finals and feel we're compromising education, and colleges have, and then I was at a department meeting, and the one teacher said, I went 4 years to college. I never took a final in my life. So I got a shot that.
What college was that?
Well, but if you want to go truly traditional, I went to high school before any of you, and we had semester finals or midterms,
I think that is
whatever you
more-
want to call them.
That is more as colleges
Right.
go. It is to have these kids know material from September to May.
And I think one of the other issues that came up too was that if we're using common assessments and every POD class or every U.S. history class are taking the same final, not everyone's at the same point halfway through the year. Whereas at the end of the year, everybody has to be at the same point, but they may not have been at the same point, so then they almost would have to develop different finals for different teachers so that, or midterms for different teachers so that it was reflective of what they were doing in the class, and then it was, a lot of
Because
time that, needed to be put in to do that, which, it was kind of
What would it take you to develop that?
difficult.
they can do it. See, the
Yeah.
problem is, that we give the year-long finals.
Yeah.
Then what's the first thing out of people's mouths? Okay, well, what's the curve? So right off the bat,
Well, it's like that in college too.
yeah, we're curving the finals because it's so hard that they can't. So do you have
Or
to
we're making the
curve-
finals ridiculously easy. On the other hand, somehow it's compensated to make it palatable. Yeah.
So if you go semesters, you get more of a straight number. That's what you get. You don't have to look at, okay, well, a 60 now is a B in this final because it's,
All right. Well, I think that's something we can discuss. I like the semester idea.
I like that
But
idea.
so if we could
Really
put that on the
do it.
agenda for next meeting. But we got to get going. We better get
We're going to
over.
have public comment.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Does anybody have public comment?
I really just want to say one thing. Way back to the grading system change, it was voted on, it was changed. I'm so happy. That's fabulous. Thank you. But my question is, if everybody's on board, majority, everyone I've ever spoken to says this is the way to go,
Great.
and it's effective next year. So I know everybody's spread thin, and I know there's probably a lot of red tape that goes with it, but the student this year then that's in 9th, 10th, 11th grade, or even 12th grade, because it still counts for seniors as well. There's some seniors that aren't in college yet, or that aren't admitted to a college yet. They still have to put down on their, this particularly applies to NCAA. It particularly applies to student athletes. And they still have to put, when they get their 82, they still have to put 2.0.
Angela, are you staying for the committee of the whole meeting? I'm asking. I'll tell you why I'm asking. Because it's not on the agenda. So at the end of the meeting, though, when it's open to public comments about anything.
The BEC thing, so I'm
Oh,
trying to
yeah.
bring it up there. I'm trying to bring it
The only reason I'm asking is you're going to have 8 board members there, and it's very simple to pose your concern, and I could ask, is there anybody that would object to doing it retroactively?
Well, and here was my proposal to Angela, because we had a conversation, was that once we get to the end of the year and we have all the students' grades, what would stop me, or us, from going back and saying, okay, you ended 11th grade at an 82, that is a B, not a C. Can we go back and say, can we go and change? I don't know how difficult it would to go.
I'll check with Debbie Cressman to see what's involved in
That and with Scott Matz and see if it's a matter of our system just changing it. I have to see what the conversion is, because that's what I said to Angela. I wouldn't have a problem taking everyone 11 through 9 right now, that where your scores lie, that then becomes reflective of that grade, that letter grade.
And that satisfies what you're asking?
It does. I think, too, the NCAA, because when I called them, they said, whatever your school reports to us when they make a change.
Right.
When they report it to us, that's what we
Yeah,
go on.
Right.
perfect pin.
So if we didn't do it till too late, I don't.
So I need to, well, I would have to say that before he would graduate or before he would start asking for transcripts next year, I would want to see it in place for September. I don't know how large of a task that is for our tech group and what would be involved with it. But that would be the approach that I would take. Do you see anything?
I have to check and see.
Okay.
All involved.
Okay. So, yeah.
All right, well, we have to get going. It's 7:25. Our meeting starts at 7:30. Curriculum Instruction Committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming.